Good evening. This is a huge band, isn't it? I mean, I think they've got the record for the amount of gold records ever given to one band. I think they have 30 gold records, and no one's ever beaten that before in America.
Yeah, also more diverse merch than anyone has done before, didn't they? I think they did coffins at one point.
No, and apparently there's a heavy metal guitarist who's no longer with us, obviously, because he's buried in one of these coffins. 6 feet under somewhere, and I can't recall his name. I don't think he's not someone super famous, but he actually bought into it. But they did everything. They invented, along with Bill Coyne, merchandise. They invented it, I think.
Yeah, and they ended up. I mean, well, they were going to have a traveling theme park at one point, weren't they?
I would have gone to that. But
yeah, there's still time. All right.
But anyway, Paul Stanley's new album is completely different from Kiss. It's Now and Then, and it's an old-fashioned soul album, isn't it?
And it sounds like he's been doing it all his life. That's what's lovely about it. So should we get him on?
Welcome to the Rockonteurs.
Okay, guys, I'm ready.
This was great, guys. It's so great to talk to two guys that have done this.
Well, it's a big tune for sure. I actually wrote that originally for Tina Turner.
Of course, I had gone and found Joni Mitchell down in Florida and brought her back.
You know, what people forget about Bowie is that he was such a kind man.
I've listened to a few of them and they've been really good, man. I'm sitting in the back of the car coming into London. They're brilliant.
Remember me? I'm in a band now. It's called Roxy Music.
You know this thing about the 10,000 hours of experience?
Oh, yeah.
Get good at something. When we recorded Arnold Lane, we'd done about 50 hours.
The Rockonteurs podcast with Gary Kemp and Guy Pratt.
Can you hear me?
Yay!
Yay, Paul.
Hello,
How are
Paul.
Yeah, that looks great. You look beautiful on my screen.
Wonderful vista behind you.
You know, this is California.
Beautiful. How is it there?
That's terrific. You know, life's good. You know, we're all coming out of our caves, you know, so it's terrific. And you guys, how are you?
We're fine. We're slowly coming out of our caves as well. I'm, although I don't know if I want to. I'm so used to it now. So we've gone from FOMO to FOGO, which is fear of going out rather than fear of missing out.
You meet people now and you don't know whether to fist bump or touch them.
Exactly.
You know,
he's institutionalized to Netflix.
I am.
How have you been? Because this album was made before or during or when?
It was finished up during, but thank God most of it was done prior to it, because, you know, when you've got 15, 17 people, it can get a little crazy. But I
was going to say, because it's got that real cut in a room.
Yeah. You know, I mean, that's really, look, we all know the same music, and all that great music was made by people living and breathing and playing together, and the chemistry. So that was important. And there was a great old studio that just, you know, everything fell into place. The whole band, it was kind of like the planets all lined up. So I was very lucky. We've been doing this for years now, but finally there was enough of a kiss break where I said, you know, for us not to go in the studio would just be a crime.
I have to say, Paul, I had no idea of this other self that you have, this incredible soul voice that you've got. I mean, I think the album sounds amazing. I mean, I was wondering who wrote that track? You know, when did that get released? Oh, you wrote it.
You know, that's the funny part, and I'm so pleased with that, is that you know, people would say to me, people who I respect would say, well, it's seamless, or they would someone else said to me, well, my favorite song on the album is Lorelei. Who did that originally? And I go,
yeah,
what are you talking about? And they go, well, tell me what's the story behind that. I went, I wrote that, you know. So but you know, when you're immersed in something, I don't want to say you take on the persona, or it was just a chance for me to do something that I love. And once I was in it, it really wasn't like, let me write songs that are like this. It was like, let me continue, you know, I'm in Soul Station, so let me write some of those songs. So
because I'm sorry to interrupt, but it really does, because vocally you sound like you're slipping into your favorite old suit. It feels like that's what you've always done.
Well, I think, look, we all have more than one side, and if somebody only listens to one kind of music, it's kind of like eating one kind of food. If you love pizza, do you really want it breakfast, lunch, and dinner? So, music's the same way. It's the variety and what you bring to your music from other sources. Otherwise, it becomes pretty incestuous. You're not creating anything with any interesting colors to it. So, when I was a teen, I was lucky enough. I saw Otis Redding. I saw Solomon Burke.
Wow.
That's always been, when I first heard Smokey and the Miracles, it was just like, whoa.
So this is in New York you saw them, I take it.
I did. Mm-hmm. I did. And that music has always been a really important part of my wheelhouse. It's in my foundation. It's funny because even in Kiss, some people don't hear, a song like Shout It Out Loud, you've got, well, the night's begun and you want some fun. Do you think you're gonna find it? That's the Four Tops. That's Sugar Pie Honey Bunch. It's the lead vocal and the response. It's the call and response.
Well, there's a great amount of funk in something like, Sure Know Something.
Sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of soul in that. You grew up, doo-wop was a big thing, wasn't it? Because, we had Stevie Van Zandt on the show, and we had John Bon Jovi as well. And it seems that, doo-wop was sort of in the bloodstream of a lot of those guys on the East Coast.
I think so. Going back to Dion and the Belmonts, going back to, the Elegants, Vito and the Elegants, all these doo-wop bands, and they would sing on corners or sing in subway stations. It would be like, you guys singing in the tunnels underneath the city. Yeah. I really think that our roots, Stephen's got that great Disciples of Soul, which is just fantastic. So I really do think that that's Southside Johnny, Asbury Jukes. That's the same thing. It's R&B based. Or I grew up loving that, and then even before that, Sam Cooke, Jackie Wilson. What's really great is Crystal, one of the singers who does the duet with me on Whenever You're Ready. Her dad sang backup for Jackie Wilson.
Oh, wow.
So he comes to the shows and he goes, he says to me, you sound like all those guys. And it's just fabulous. Otis Williams from the Temps. He said, your version of Just My Man.
Did you mean The Temptation? Was that?
Yeah. The Temps was, familiarity.
Yeah. I like that. I love that you're on that level of familiarity with them.
But Otis was, he said to me, your version of Just My Imagination is as good as ours. And I was like,
whoa.
I went, whoa, let me take that in and let me carry that for the next month or two.
Yeah. Can I have that in writing?
Yeah.
I thought I Do sounded a bit like the Stylistics, which are that sort of vibe,
Well, thank you. Both you guys have stellar, careers and roots. So,
well, no, I mean, it's growing up as kids, we're all the same, eclectic. We loved everything from punk to prog to chic and soul, and I bought so many records on the Casablanca label.
That's a whole other thing. But also, because all English kids are Motown kids. That's one thing. The Motown was an absolute part of the fabric for the generation before us and for us. And it's because the thing, in Britain, we didn't have the radio stations like you could be into just one thing. We just had Radio 1. And so we just got a little bit of everything. So it's kind of impossible to be a purist growing up in England, unless you really work at it.
And it worked. What's phenomenal about England is the abundance of great bands and musical talent that's come out of, a country. It would be like saying here, wow, Rhode Island turned out 500, stellar bands. It makes me scratch my head that there's something in the water or something in the air, because clearly, you on your side of the pond, you've just absorbed it all. Whether it's the Beatles or Led Zeppelin or Adele, everybody's got these deep roots. Dusty Springfield, come on, it doesn't get any better than Dusty.
You know, Paul, I think
that's a great eclectic mix you've said right there. You know, just in that's brilliant.
But I think the one of the keys to the British band scene, and I think probably a big influence on you in the early 70s, is we had this constant flow of pop television. You know, we had a program, Top of the Pops.
Sure.
16 million, and that's a lot in the UK. 16 million people watched that every week. Your granny knew what was at number one. So I think bands grew up, and before then it was Ready, Steady, Go and Oh Boy. So I think bands got the idea of the power of the visual. I will never forget the first time I saw Mark Bolan with the glitter on his cheek. I mean, it changed my life, you know, and Bowie doing Starman, obviously. And then looking at Kiss and what you guys were doing, that glam scene coming out of the UK must have been a huge influence on you.
Totally. I used to take the bus to the subway and the subway down to the village, Greenwich Village, every week to an international newsstand to pick up Melody Maker, Sounds, and NME.
Wow.
I had
Top
to.
Man.
That was like my Bible. And even though some of those bands I didn't even get to see, although, you know, I got deep into the Move and some other bands that didn't really mean anything in the States, so to speak. But visually, there was something about all those bands that they just got it, you know, and visually it was so unifying in terms of bands' looks that we, you know, I always consider us, you know, the bastard child of a lot of British bands, and interestingly, British bands were influenced by, you know, American music. So it's really a back and forth,
Absolutely.
and I think that's what makes it exciting.
What's interesting, though, is that because, your thing, looking at it now, you know, with the perspective of time, is that it was absolutely a glam thing, just like Roxy or Slade or anything like that. The difference being that you found those characters and stuck with them.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, when we started wearing platform boots, and originally I used to get my boots, you know, they would be made in England and sent over. My heroes, you know, after the American bands that I loved, and I'm not talking about the Haight-Ashbury stuff, which, you know, to me was just like the antithesis of everything that I love.
You're more New York Dolls, right? You're more sort of New York Dolls. And
I would say when I'm talking about bands in America, I tend to be talking more about the Philly soul and the Motown.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, my influences in terms of going to see bands, I mean, Humble Pie, you know.
Hey, my Humble Pie album is just there, but I don't know why. Rockin' the Fillmore. It's one of the great live albums ever. And
that's something I wanted to come to when we get to your first album, in fact,
because it's
which
true.
is relevant to that.
Because Humble Pie broke on a live album. Peter Frampton broke on a live album. You guys broke on a live album. They were such a big thing in the 70s, weren't they?
We were originally the template for our live album in terms of packaging and everything was actually a Uriah Heep live album. We were much more known for our live shows. Our music in terms of the way it was recorded really didn't put across who we were. So it took the live album, which much more created kind of a sonic souvenir of what the band was live, to take us over the top. But, you know, I had seen Humble Pie with Peter Frampton, which was amazing. I saw Slade, you know.
Slade weren't really a thing, were they, in America? No. They didn't really. So where did you see them? Was that some club?
At the Fillmore East.
Right, they did do the Fillmore.
Every weekend, no matter who was playing, I wanted to go and just take this great music in, because you get 3 bands on a bill. And I saw the Yardbirds. Jimmy Page was playing with the Yardbirds when I saw them. And they were just, it was such a fertile time in New York. And not coincidentally, I'd say 98% of those bands were all British bands.
Jeff Beck Group, maybe? I don't know.
Oh, come on, you know.
Yeah.
Ron Wood is a bass player. Is so underappreciated. His bass playing is just off the charts.
It's true, yeah. And it's funny you say that, because that's a big thing I have, because there's there's guitarists who play bass where you can really tell, and because they're just not getting it. But you're right, Woody does actually have the thing.
I butted in earlier when you were talking about American bands, and I think I don't know whether you didn't get to what you were saying, but talking about Tamla groups and talking about the Temptations and Stylistics, they did all have something in common with you in the end, really, because they all had a uniform on stage. They understood showbiz. You know, they had synchronized dancing, and they had sequins or glitter or whatever it might be. You were selling yourself visually as well as musically.
Well, let's remember that Brian Epstein took the Beatles and put them in collarless suits, you know, and unified them. And I always found that so great about British bands, and something that we used as a template was the idea that when you looked at the Stones, for example, well, nobody in the Stones would fit the Beatles or vice versa. Mm-hmm. And every band had a cohesive look to it. Dave D. Dozy, BQ, Nick, and you know, I mean, even look at that, you know, the bands had a synergy, and that's what we wanted. We wanted a group identity, and really those were our templates.
Just tell us about growing up, if you don't mind, Paul. You know, meeting Gene and how that all began for you, you know, as kids, because that's such an interesting thing for most people to hear.
I met Gene at a guitar player's house that we were both playing with, but separately. You know, people would be in multiple bands at that point, and this guitar player, one day I came over and he introduced me to Gene, and I didn't take to him very well, but you know, he was surprised that somebody other than Lennon, McCartney, and Gene wrote songs. Oh, yeah. And we sat down, and I played. He said, "Oh, you write too? Play me a song." So I played him a song, which wound up on the first Kiss album, a song called "Let Me Know," and it wasn't that different. You know, there's similarities actually to a Humble Pie song, to Big George, but anyway, so just pragmatism. Although I didn't really connect that much with Gene, he was very talented and very bright, and I knew that the two of us would go farther than I would on my own.
Because how long had you been writing? Where was that coming from? You were just sort of writing on your own into a void in the hope that...
I started writing songs when I was 12 or 13. And I remember around 15, I went to the Brill Building and just made an appointment to play some songs for people, you know.
You could do that?
So well, you thought you might be just a songwriter at one point in the classic Jewish tradition, you know, because you did mention growing up in an Irish neighborhood, you either had to run or come up with some great witty line, you know.
Yeah, or you had to kick some ass, you know. So yeah, I always wanted to be in music. I always wanted to perform. You know, I remember seeing. In my teens, other than seeing Zeppelin, which was really a religious experience. I saw them in the summer of '69. And
how big were they then? How big a place would that have been?
It was thousands. It was not. Okay. It was between the first and second album, and they were just astounding. I mean, the chemistry in that band was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, to this day, I've never heard anything like that. I mean, everybody in that band was just, you know, on 10, you know, in terms of ability and pushing each other. So I knew when I saw Zeppelin that, okay, I can't reach that height, but don't ever forget that that's where the bar is, and at least aspire to something like that. I remember seeing The Who in '68, I believe. And Pete Townsend might as well, other than being a phenomenal guitar player, he was like watching Michael Jordan with a guitar. This guy, he would jump up in the air and just seem to hover, you know, and that's always been my passion is to be a performer and to relate to an audience and put that across. Steve Marriott was the perfect example of a preacher, somebody up there with a guitar.
Oh yeah.
Just grabbed everybody by the throat. So
do the line, Gary. Do the line. You know you want to.
We go home on Monday, but I want to tell you, it's really been a gas this time.
It's been a gas.
But Terry Reid is a guy that I feel missed out a little bit there. I was watching some old footage yesterday of Terry Reid on stage at the first Glastonbury. Oh my God, he was so incredible.
I did see him. Hey, I mean, Tinker Tailor, the first album was fabulous. Look, Frankie Miller, come on.
Oh, he was one of the first gigs I ever saw, his Full House. He was amazing. Yeah.
I mean, just phenomenal. I mean, Frankie Miller, I mean, that's right up there back then with Rod, that soul, that Sam Cooke, that Otis Redding, that David Ruffin.
It's funny, your rock obviously came from the UK. Your soul obviously comes from America. What was the moment you guys get it, beginning and playing when someone walked in the room and went, we've got to just paint our faces. We've got to do something different. Was it an influence of Alice? Was Alice part of that?
Not at all.
Because your contemporaries were Aerosmith and the New York Dolls, right? Were they not?
Well, look, let's call it for what it is. The New York Dolls got a lot more credit, perhaps, than they deserved. They were not a great band.
No.
And they didn't really sell any albums, so to speak. It's more the myth and the legend and, the look. So you wind up with the Hanoi Rocks, and you wind up with a lot of bands that kind of used that as a template. All the bands that we looked to were British, I mean, what was I listening to? Mata Hoople.
Yay. You just sound like a hip 70s English teenager.
Well, I take that as a compliment.
It is.
I'm just interested in that moment when you decided to cover yourself up, really, to change your identity. There is a famous Bowie show at the Roundhouse when he first went into glam. I don't know what year it was. I think it was 71 off the top of my head. And he called all the band different characters, and they were kind of like comic book superheroes in a way. When was this moment that you and who came up with it?
Yours was at first, it was just like a whiteface thing, wasn't it?
Each of us kind of went into our own directions. So the only thing that we were kind of unified in was this weird idea of making up. I mean, we basically sat in front of a mirror, bought some makeup, and saw where it took us.
Was Gene the driving force, or was it you? Or?
There really wasn't one. I have to say that it was very much, certainly Gene and I were always we knew what we wanted to do. And Gene is also an avid Anglophile and with the same roots as I have. So I don't know. We just, like I said, we saw Slade, we saw all these British bands, and you saw Bowie with Mick Ronson, and the chemistry in those bands was palpable. It was something we didn't have in the States.
Dave Hill, Super Yob,
Yeah.
But what about the fact that the live album was the one that broke you? I mean, your record company kept on. Casablanca, Believe in You. Let's talk a bit about that, to be honest, Paul. The whole sort of scene of Casablanca, being that sort of, a very New York Studio 54 sort of disco.
Yeah, it's a disco label, yeah. Because when you started with them, the fact that, I think this is where the Humble Pie album is relevant, because he produced that as well, is the fact that you had, for your first album, you had Eddie Kramer, right, producing. That's heavy.
Well, Gene and I were in a previous band. And
Wicked Lester.
Yeah. Which is better forgotten, but at the same time, it gave roots to Kiss. And at that point, Gene and I were lucky enough to have wormed our way into Electric Lady Studios. So we were there.
Wow.
I just called that studio over and over and over, and finally got through to a producer there. And when he didn't take my phone calls, I said to his secretary, "You tell him that it's because of guys like him that bands break up." And that got him to the phone. And So we did the Wicked Lester album over the course of a year and a half on what was called spec time. You sit in the lobby of the studio, and according to the schedule of when people are supposed to be leaving the studio, then you would run in and record. So it might say someone would be out at 5 p.m., and lo and behold, they wouldn't be out till midnight. So you'd be sitting for 7 hours.
Oh my God, like standby flights, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. And no meal, you know. But we would see Eddie there, Eddie Kramer. They had 2 studios and they ran 24/7. You could say, well, who's in today? Well, Jeff Beck's in A and Stevie Wonder's in B, or Zeppelin is in. So, you know, for us, it was hallowed ground. And we would see Eddie walking around, and we were ultimately, Gene and I were owed money for doing some session work. We would do background vocals on whatever needed.
But see, it's great. You wormed your way into doing that. You know.
Sure. So Gene and I did background vocals, and at one point we were owed money by the producer that had brought us into the studio, and he didn't have the money to pay us. And we said, well, we want studio time. And this was with Kiss in the beginning. And we said, well, we want studio time, and we want, if you can get Eddie Kramer to do the demos, then we're square. So
that's pretty cocky for a young.
Yeah. Well, you know, no glory.
But the Casablanca sort of soul thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Bill Aucoin, you know, who was a figure that I you know, I mean, let's describe Bill for a bit, because he's such a key figure in music. You know, he managed Billy Idol in the 80s, Generation X. I met him in the early 80s. I know Guy did too.
I had a hashtag me too. But let's skip over that.
Hands off.
But you know, and Bill was part of that sort of disco scene as well, I guess. You know, but he also came out of a Supermarket Sweep, didn't he? He produced that TV.
You know, the disco came. You know, we're talking about Casablanca in 1974, and disco really didn't happen for quite a bit after that. Look, Bill really was the 5th member of Kiss. We never would have achieved what we achieved without him, because he was like, funny enough, he was basically our age, but he came across like a father figure, and he wasn't a manager, but he was a visionary, and we listened to him. And he had a way of placating all of us to make each one of us feel that we were the most important. And he was the glue for quite a while. So, and Neil Bogart, who started Casablanca Records, he had a long reign at a label called Buddha. And at Buddha, he had just countless hit songs. So his background, I can't say was albums, and his background wasn't nurturing talent. It was knocking out, at the end of his reign at Buddha, it was called bubblegum music. You know, it was
the Archies.
Yeah. So he, but again, when he first signed us, he wanted us to take the makeup off.
Really?
Yeah. So it was, again, an interesting time, but we said, no, you know, it's either the way we are or, you know, not at all. But then the whole idea of the levitating drum kit was Neil's, and us never being seen without makeup was Bill's. So although the core and the whole concept was ours, the embellishments came from them. They certainly helped out. A few people did. But Casablanca, quite honestly, was more intent on trying to have a hit single than grow a band. But you know, they
did you buy into all of it, Paul? Was did you ever get to that situation, you know, when you're making, you know, those fun movies, or you're becoming comic book characters, and Bill's saying you can't take your makeup off? Was there ever a moment when you went, but I want to be I want to move on from this.
I want to be me.
Was it just kids having amazing fun? I mean, there's that fantastic chat show that you're on where I think, Ace is a little bit.
Oh yeah, the Tom Snyder one.
Yeah.
Well, you're being very cool. It must be said, you're being very.
I was just,
He wasn't having it, right?
No.
Yeah, I was doing my best to not panic, But look, there was this dichotomy. We existed as this massive band and this phenomenon, and yet, on the street, I mean, to say that nobody knew who I was would be an exaggeration.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I wondered if it's kind of like do people really not know who you are? It's like the Clark Kent just parts his hair the other side, puts his glasses on, and no one knows that's Superman.
Well, when you see somebody 6 feet plus with with the flamboyant clothes and platform boots and blue-black hair down to here, you kind of go, well, either that's a member of KISS or the circus is in town. It's like, but it was weird. There certainly was a yearning for acknowledgement. Hey, it's me. But look, when you win the lottery, you don't complain about taxes. If we were very, very fortunate. And although, there were certain things that might have been frustrating on the whole, we were in Disneyland, I mean, we had some missteps, but here we are, almost 50 years later.
It seemed that even though, like most bands, like Queen even, who had a kind of, their arc had happened in this sort of mid to late 70s, and then there was a falling off, Queen came back with Live Aid, obviously. The gift to you guys was MTV.
Well, interesting. MTV didn't want anything to do with us at first. They really, when we were wearing the makeup, they basically ignored us, had nothing to do with us. Wasn't until we took the makeup off, surprisingly, that they jumped on board. So initially, what did you have? You had Duran Duran, you had Spandau Ballet, you had, Culture Club ABC, Wham. It was, hey, look again. Again, it turns out, where were the bands from? They were from your side of the pond. So
but definitely the 80s, there was a rebirth for you guys.
Yes.
It was incredible.
Not coincidentally, it had to do with taking the makeup off. We really reached a point where the band, people were just tired of seeing us. I do believe that people also listen with their eyes. And when what they're seeing doesn't agree with them or they don't like it, they're not going to like what they're hearing. And we put out the last album, the last album with makeup was Creatures of the Night, which was a great album. And yet it was pretty much ignored. And I had wanted to take the makeup off at that point. I figured, look, if we're not good enough to continue without the makeup, then we shouldn't continue. So we finally took it off on the next album, and lo and behold, the album sold 4 or 5 times what Creatures of the Night sold, because people just didn't. They were tired of that look, and we had brought in new members with new makeup, and that was a mistake. We had built these 4 iconic characters, and suddenly, we're 5 steps away from having Turtle Boy in the band. I mean, it just reached.
I would have been Turtle Boy. I would have done that. I've got it all ready to go.
Ladies and gentlemen, Caterpillar Man.
But what is funny is that, and how did that feel to you when because as you said, things started to work?
It's like turning up in a nudist colony, wasn't it? You felt totally naked.
Yeah, well, the goods were still covered, but that's what the guitar is for. But no, it felt very freeing for me. I never felt that the makeup certainly exaggerated and amplified a part of who I am. But what I was doing, it came from here.
Yeah.
So it didn't really change. I mean, what I did on stage didn't change. I know it was tougher for Gene, but I just thought it lifted a weight off our shoulders and allowed us to not only survive, but to thrive until we decided, okay, let's do it again.
Yeah, because obviously you must have been nervous because there's a bunch of your audience that are really probably like Comic-Con guys, that want to go and dress up like the characters and like in Doctor Who or Star Wars or whatever it might be, and you might be letting them down. Suddenly they're alone out there in the crowd.
Yeah, but ultimately you can't let yourself down
because you're a very expressive, soulful songwriter. Again, your stuff and I know this isn't your song, but I always find it interesting because most of the Kiss stuff on the earlier albums, it makes sense to have these painted up characters because most of the songs are about a character, it's about a guy or a girl, whatever, and the audience can project themselves onto that character and be whoever they want. But then your biggest hit, then you get something like Beth, which is a genuinely heartfelt song, clearly written by someone for his missus, being sung by someone painted as a cat.
Well, Bob Ezrin, hats off to him.
Bob, yeah.
Beth wouldn't have happened. Bob really took a germ of an idea and turned it into something much, much more than that. So, interestingly, back to Soul Station for a moment, when people are surprised, and I understand it when people hear me sing a certain way and they go, really? Funny thing, I'm digressing, but I was having coffee one day with Rod Stewart, who lives near me, and I was talking about, my 15-piece R&B band. He goes, "You have an R&B band?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Who sings?" And I said,
"Yeah, but Rod's a bitch like that,
Yeah. But he knew.
But he goes, "You can handle that music, you can handle those songs." I said, "Okay." So I played him some of Soul Station, and he was, just blown away. Anyway, what I was getting to in that same realm is Roots. I was made for loving you, baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the shadows of love.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course.
It's Four Tops.
Yeah.
Great song.
Yeah.
And that, who co-wrote that with you? It was
Desmond.
It was a Desmond Child
who went on and wrote with John Bon Jovi in the 80s and did their big hit.
I connected him with John.
Wow.
And, Desmond's amazing. I mean, the guy lives and breathes. He really, it's not a coincidence what he did with Bon Jovi or what he did with Aerosmith or Joan Jett. The list just goes on and on.
But sorry, if I can just interrupt with, back to this songwriter thing. So what happened about your audition at the Brill Building? Did you do it?
Somebody could have been a real dick, but this guy listened to me, and I was 15 years old, and he was very, very nice and very supportive, and said, I think you should stay with it and keep working at it.
Oh.
And, I wasn't disappointed. Maybe I was relieved because I kind of stepped into the deep end of the pool, but, it was nice to get some acknowledgement, and I just went and kept writing. And,
that's exactly what you needed, in fact.
Yeah. Just somebody in a position of, being able to listen to it and saying, okay, but
obviously what I wanted you to say was, so I went there and Carole King and Carol Bayer-Sager and Neil Diamond all said to me, "Kid."
And they all came out and sang back up.
Paul, you've gone back into the clothes. You've got the band are fully formed how they used to be. You're doing unbelievably mega shows. I mean, you just did Dubai, didn't you? In lockdown. It's already in the Guinness Book of Records, I think. For something, I don't know what. We actually play well. It sounds amazing, and I think it's extraordinary. There can't be many bands that are bigger now than in their heyday. Mm-hmm. In the same. I mean, I only think of Queen in that of kind of gone into that realm. But it's people want to see you now because you made a great quote, and this is the one I wanted to bring up.
Oh yes, I think I know this one.
Where you said, we didn't have to be as good as we were. We had to be as good as people thought we were.
Yeah, well, it's really when we put the original guys back together, who are now gone again, probably. Well, they're gone at this point, probably 20 years or something crazy. But when we got them back, we had to get everybody in tip-top shape, and we had to put together the show that people remembered, not the show that existed. For 1977, it was a massive show. For today, it was nothing. So we had to create the show that they imagined. And in the same way, we had to look like they remembered. Time had passed and nobody wanted to see a bunch of fat guys in tights. It's just...
No, that's Shakespeare.
But I suppose that is the other great thing about what you do, about the makeup thing, is because, you look the same. You don't look like you've aged, It's... believe me, it looks good.
My bones tell me different,
But I feel like it's such an American institution what you have now. It's a bit like, the Empire State isn't the biggest building anymore, but when I go to New York, I want to see the Empire State.
Exactly. I think that, not to take it too seriously, but I've always said bands make music and phenomenons impact society.
Let's just finish on your what I think is a brilliant album, and it's definitely a party album. Yeah. It's one you want to put on when people are around, right? Just how you put that band together in the first place, and how much balls it took to suddenly say to your crowd, your followers, after decades, this is also who I am.
I think that the most important thing you can do is to free yourself of, be proud of who you are. And also no secrets. I mean, not that that's anything that needs to be a secret, but as far as I know, I only get one shot at this life. And I don't want to live within the boundaries anybody else sets. I don't want to, at the end of the day, go, gee, I wish I had, or I could have, or I should have. I did Soul Station. I formed it selfishly because I wanted to hear that music. And to be in the middle of it, man, to be doing Get Ready or doing La La Means I Love You by the Delphonics. Or anything else.
Well, on your own ones. That's the amazing thing. Yeah. That's what's so incredible, which slip in there so seamlessly.
Yeah. So how did the band get together? I actually wanted to do a charity gig for my children's school. And one year I put together a band. Dave Grohl was at the school at the same time. So
not as a child, as a parent.
As a parent.
Right.
As a parent. We're still
teaching drums.
We're still children.
Right.
But so one year I put together this great band and there would be these evening fundraisers for the parents. And one year I put together this great band and we did all this Bad Company and Zeppelin and Derek and the Dominoes. And then the next year I went, I don't want to do that again. I want to do Motown and Philly. That's something I've always wanted to do. And I started there and made a couple of calls, and a few of the people I knew from playing with Sean Hurley, a bass player who's absolutely, he's,
Don't say he's the best because Guy Pratt's here, right?
Yeah. Well, the roots are all, Sean's roots are Jamerson and Duck Dunn.
Yeah.
And all the people who have influenced so many, I'm sure you included. So
Jamerson wrote the book. He invented it. Yeah.
Ridiculous. Listen to I Was Made to Love Her, just crazy. Bob Babbitt, all these great bass players. Anyway, made some phone calls and called some people who I knew, and then started calling people I didn't know. And surprisingly, when I said, yeah, you know, I want to do Motown and Philly soul, everybody goes, I'm in. So help me. The band got together, and there's some videos of us playing the Roxy in LA from 2016, I think. The band had been together 2 weeks.
Well, I'll have to look that up.
Wow. Yeah.
And, you know, it's just been amazing. It's just been people who play with Smokey and Stevie and everybody else who just go, this is all I want to do. I just want to, you know, I want to do.
And we got to keep that music alive. That brand of music needs to be kept alive, doesn't it?
I think so. You know, to have it relegated to being samples in rap tunes, that's okay. People should hear the whole song. And I'd like to think Soul Station is kind of like, those songs are the roots, but all the new stuff that we're doing and we've written is kind of what came from those roots. And it's not very, you know, it's not far off. It's from the same tree.
No, it absolutely is. Like, you know, exactly as we were saying. I was just trying to think, why don't I know this song? I must know.
So is Gene ringing up going, look, when are you going to finish with that band? Let's get out on the road again. I mean, but you've got this dichotomy now, haven't you? You've got to finish the Kiss final.
Yes, the end of the road tour. Well, let's see. Let me, this is from 2 days ago.
A text, right?
This is a text from 2 days ago. And this is from Gene 2 days ago. You should be really proud. Soul Station project is very impressive.
Wow.
It's lovely, yeah.
So,
well, that's nice.
Yeah.
That must be nice from your old mucker.
Totally. You know, he's like, you know, we're family. We go back to, you know, living in our parents' homes. So, but those are his roots too. I think he was pleasantly surprised how good it is. You know, I think it's not a tribute album in the sense that, you know, sometimes tribute albums become vanity projects and not much more. To me, this was a passion project. This is just something that's as much a part of me as anything else. And the quality of it is because it's heartfelt, and you know, you can't imitate that. You know, this isn't a karaoke record. It's reverently done, and yet it still has its own identity.
Yeah, but it has that key thing, which is the word effortless. You know, it sounds effortless. That's always when you know something's the real deal.
And are you going on the road with the album, or as I asked, is there a commitment to Kiss?
Well, you know, Kiss hits the road mid-August, and in
the US.
In the US, and we'll be on your side come summer of 22. We'll finally, after cancel 2 years in a row, we'll headline it.
Well, listen, you know, if you have
join the club, yeah,
I've got my Mr. Caterpillar suit and it's ready. Right?
Yeah, there you go. You'll be hitting the stage singing back.
Oh, actually, there's one thing I want to say, Paul, which I don't know if there's enough credit for, is that especially on those first few albums, is the arrangement of the two guitars between you and Ace is brilliant. How you always had fantastic interweaving parts. I
was just talking a few nights ago. I always wanted Kiss to be one big guitar, you know, as opposed to people noodling. I wanted two inversions of chords that would mesh, not unlike, you know, some of what Humble Pie was doing.
Or maybe Blue Oyster Cult as well.
Yeah, you know, just the idea of two guitars making one big guitar. So, well, thank you. Thank you again.
Man, Paul, it's been such a pleasure.
Really.
Seriously, what a beautiful voice. Your voice is getting better and better, and I wish you so much luck with this album.
Well, you know, your career has been very impressive, from music to acting. You know, kudos to you, both of you. You know, Guy, you know, to have you doing so many diverse projects, you know. So,
thank you very much. Thank you. Well, that means a lot. Well, what's nicest about this, Paul, is that you sound like, with all your influences and your roots, you sound like just one of us, you know.
Well, a Brit, you mean? A Brit. He does sound a bit like a Brit, doesn't he?
I take that as a high compliment.
All right. God bless her.
Brilliant. Well, that was really good, wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
that was really, really nice. Like I said, I was actually quite, I don't know, just because of the whole history of Kiss, and you know, and because Gene always comes over as quite fearsome. Was that we knew he was a lovely guy, but it was, but I love that he comes from such a similar place, you know, musically.
Yeah, I mean, I found he's a soul man, really, isn't he? I mean, that's what's extraordinary. His roots, even that thing about the early Kiss dressing up, you know, it was the same as the Temptations or all of those bands.
But the funny thing is, because that's actually, you had that first generation of English guys who all come from the blues, but then there's a lot of those 70s rock bands were people who started at like Coverdale and that, you know, were all people who were into soul, who sang soul music. So it's kind of, so it's basically coming from the same place as sort of English rock bands came from.
And Dave Hill got a mention.
Yes. Yeah. No prog, but we did get the Super Yob guitar in.
Although they did do a prog album, didn't they, Kiss?
They did do a prog, but I don't really like to talk about it, I think.
There's something music from the story.
The Elder. It moved from the Elder. And it was meant to be fun. It never came out, yeah.
But listen, I really enjoyed that. If you haven't heard the album, you should have a listen to it, because it really is a brilliant. Not you, Guy. I'm talking to our general listener.
Obviously, I've listened to it. Yes,
I'm talking to our listener.
You're talking to the audience.
Anyway, if you like that, then we thank you, and please subscribe and download, leave comments. We're enjoying this. We want to carry on, and we love your support. Thank you.
Indeed we do. So it's good night from me.
And it's good night from Mr. Caterpillar.